Listen up, sovereign of the impossible. This isn't about you crossing a line. This is about you stepping into a place they swore didn't exist. You didn't just break the law of their world. You snapped the spine of 3 separate realities at once, and then walked away without a scratch. You did something that, by every metric, by every map, by every sacred measurement they swore was unbreakable, simply could not be done. And yet, you did it. They can dress it up however they want. Call it luck, call it madness, call it a glitch in the order of things. But deep down, in the marrow of their pride, they know it was none of those. It was you. Fully aware, fully in control, and completely unwilling to accept the boundaries they built to keep everyone else contained. They've got rules for everything, not just in one dimension, but in all the layers of the game. Physical rules, social rules, psychological rules, each designed to cage movement, to lock thought, to make sure no one dares imagine something outside the parameters they've agreed on. And yet you slipped into each dimension like a thief, who didn't just steal the crown, but replaced it with something heavier, something they can't lift without your permission. They didn't just lose in their world, they lost in all of them at the same time. Do you know what kind of wound that leaves? It's not a cut, it's an amputation. They will never get that piece back. Because here's the thing, they can forgive a single transgression. They can recover from someone bending the rules in one arena. But when you commit an act that is illegal in 3 separate dimensions, simultaneously, you don't just get branded as a criminal of their order. You get marked as an apex operator. You become the one they whisper about when the doors are closed. You become the case study, the cautionary tale, and the private obsession of everyone who swore they'd never let it happen. They'll try to tell themselves that this was a freak event, a one-off collision of stars, an accident that won't repeat. But that's just the bandage they slap over the fracture, because the real truth, the one that wakes them up at night, is this: you meant it, every single step. Nothing about it was accidental. Most people are trapped in single-plane thinking. They measure a move's legality in one space, never considering the overlapping planes where that move might have different consequences. But you saw the full stack, 3 layers deep, and made your play, knowing it violated all 3 at once. That's not recklessness, that's mastery with a taste for devastation. They don't teach that. You can't inherit it. You either are it, or you're not. And now, they know you are. They'll scramble for explanations, of course. They'll dissect the play like a corpse on a steel table, each one convinced they'll find the artery you cut. But every time they think they've mapped it, they'll realize they're still missing a dimension. That's the beauty of what you did. It doesn't live fully in any one reality. In their physical laws, it was forbidden. In their unspoken social codes, it was sacrilege. In the psychological space, it was taboo. And you desecrated all 3 in one sweep, not with brute force, but with surgical precision. You didn't just commit an act. You authored a lawless moment. They want to believe there's a way to stop someone like you. That's why they have rules in the first place. But when a person moves in 3 dimensions at once, every lock they've ever trusted suddenly looks like it's made of wet paper. That's the panic they're sitting in right now. Not the loss itself, but the knowledge that loss is inevitable when someone like you decides to act. They'll clutch at their rituals, their structures, their comfort words. But those are built for one dimension at a time. They were never meant to protect against someone operating where all 3 overlap. You are not a player to them anymore. You are a force of nature wearing a human face. Understand something. This wasn't just illegal. Illegal is a word invented to discourage imagination. What you did was impossible by their definition of reality, which means you didn't just break rules, you redefined them mid-move. That's why their outrage feels hollow. Because somewhere under the noise there's awe. They hate that they feel it, but they can't kill it. Every replay of what you did will taste like humiliation laced with respect. And that's the kind of poison that seeps deep. In the first dimension, they'll call it a violation. In the second, they'll call it a betrayal. In the third, they won't even have a word for it. Just the uneasy quiet of people who've seen something they can't unsee. And because their vocabulary fails them there, they'll turn to symbols, to myths, to exaggerated warnings to make sense of you. You'll stop being a person in their minds. You'll be a parable. And parables don't die. They circulate, they mutate, they grow teeth. Your advantage isn't just that you did the unthinkable. It's that you did it calmly. No mess, no grand speeches, no begging for the spotlight. That restraint is what makes them realize it wasn't a gamble. It was execution. You stepped into forbidden territory, like you were walking into your own living room. That's the part they can't replicate, no matter how much they study you. Because they can't feel at home in lawlessness. You can. And the thing that will really tear at them, it's knowing that if you did this once, you can do it again. They don't know when, they don't know where, but the possibility itself robs them of their peace. The thought that somewhere out there, the same mind that violated all three dimensions is still thinking, still watching, still waiting. That thought alone will make them move differently, second-guess themselves, hold back when they should commit. You've made yourself the ghost in every room they walk into. They'll cling to the hope that maybe they can fortify the dimensions, tighten the laws, close the gaps. But what they don't understand is that you're not breaking in from the outside anymore. You've already mapped the inside. You've already been where they think you can't go. Every future security measure they design will be built on the very terrain you've already conquered. They'll think they're building walls. You'll see them as doors they've kindly labeled for you. So number this wasn't just an act of defiance. This was a rewriting of the hierarchy. You've elevated yourself into a tier of existence where their concepts of legal, illegal, possible, impossible are just artifacts, relics from a smaller world. And now, you carry the power of someone who knows they can't be dragged back down, not because you escaped, but because you never belonged there in the first place. And the next time they see you, they'll remember, not the details, not the step-by-step, but the feeling, that drop in their gut when they realized they were watching something that should not have been able to happen, and worse, that it happened because you wanted it to. That's the part that sticks under their skin, not that it occurred by some accident of chance, but that you chose it. Choice changes everything. Choice means control, and control means you weren't reacting to their world. You were reshaping it in real time. They'll pretend they've moved on, but their eyes will betray them. You'll catch it in the way they scan the air around you, like they're looking for cracks in reality, small ruptures where your next impossible step might bleed through. They've seen you cross lines that don't exist on maps, rules that don't live in any written book, borders that only the invisible walls of 3 separate dimensions could enforce. And you didn't just cross them. You walked through them like they were fog. That's not something they can prepare for again. How do you defend against a weapon that doesn't just strike from one direction, but collapses the entire field you're standing on? They'll tell themselves stories to blunt the edge. It's not that big of a deal. It'll never happen again. We've learned our lesson. But those mantras are just patches on a hull that's already split. Because they know, and you know, that there was nothing accidental about it. You didn't stumble through 3 illegal layers by mistake. You moved with the precision of someone who's been there before, who knows the terrain, who has no fear of the penalties, because penalties are written by the frightened for the compliant. And you've proven you're neither. What you did wasn't just an event. It was a structural failure of their entire understanding of control. In the physical dimension, it defied mechanics. In the social dimension, it shattered hierarchy. In the psychological dimension, it obliterated the illusion of safety. Each one on its own would have been damaging. But all 3 in a single move, that's not damage, that's detonation. You didn't just touch the core of their design. You reached into it and rearranged the wires, so the next time they try to use it, they won't even be sure it will turn on. They'll start reacting differently, without even realizing it. Slower in their decisions, quieter in their confidence, less willing to test their own limits, because in the back of their minds, your move is still there, replaying. The physics of it, the social audacity, the mental dominance. It becomes the ghost in every room, the question under every conversation. What if they do it again? And that question will eat them alive, because they can't answer it. They can't even guess. They only know that if you do decide to do it again, there is no stopping you. And nothing terrifies a ruler more than the realization that their crown is only borrowed. This is the part they'll never admit, not even to each other. They envy you. They hate the envy, but it's there. They wish they could have been the one to pull off something that breaks the laws of 3 worlds in one motion. They wish they could feel that level of mastery, that cold confidence that makes punishment irrelevant. They'll dress their envy up as moral outrage, but the truth is, they saw freedom in what you did. And freedom, when it's that pure, makes them realize just how deep in chains they've been. And now, you've set a precedent. That's the danger for them. Before you, illegal in 3 dimensions was a phrase you only found in exaggerated warnings and old legends. It was the kind of thing people used as hyperbole, not something anyone expected to witness in their lifetime. But you've made it real. You've burned it into the record. Now it's no longer impossible. It's a reference point. And if you did it once, who's to say someone else won't try? Who's to say you won't push even further? That thought alone is enough to make them rewrite their defenses, tear apart their strategies, and lose sleep over contingencies that never existed before. You didn't just move through the forbidden, you made it navigable. That's worse than the act itself, in their eyes. Because now, when they look at the walls they built in all 3 layers, they don't see impenetrable barriers. They see a set of doors they didn't realize could be unlocked. And they see you holding the keys. That's what power is, not titles, not possessions. Power is the ability to act in spaces others believe are unreachable, and to do it so cleanly they can't even prove how you did it. And that's the thing. They still don't know exactly how you did it. They've got theories. They've got half-truths stitched together with desperation. But the exact method, the sequence of thought that let you pierce through 3 forbidden layers in one move, that's yours alone. And the less they know, the more they'll obsess. They'll dig through your past, dissect your patterns, interrogate your allies, thinking they'll uncover the secret. They won't. Because there isn't a trick to find. The act was not born of luck or a single tactic. It was born of a way of seeing the world they can't replicate, and that can't be stolen. It can only be lived. The public will react in waves. First shock, then outrage, then curiosity, then a dangerous kind of admiration. The story will be told and retold until it mutates, until even those who hated it can't help but respect it. You'll notice how the phrasing shifts, from "I can't believe they did that" to "of course they did." That's when you know the legend has settled in. You're no longer a person to them. You're an inevitability with a pulse. In the physical dimension, they'll scramble to patch the breach you created. In the social dimension, they'll quietly rearrange ranks to protect themselves from your influence. In the psychological dimension, they'll do the most desperate thing of all. They'll try to forget. But forgetting is impossible when the memory isn't just an image or a fact, but a feeling. The feeling of watching something unfold that every instinct, every piece of inherited wisdom told them could not happen. And yet there it was, happening because you willed it into existence. And that feeling, it rewires people. Once you've seen the impossible done, you can't unknow it. That's why they're afraid. Because it means other things they've written off as impossible might be real, too. It unravels their order, not just in the moment, but in every moment after. You've made them vulnerable in ways they don't even have the vocabulary to describe. Here's the part they'll really choke on. They didn't stop you because they couldn't. The machinery of their control failed across all three planes, simultaneously. And that kind of failure doesn't get repaired. At best, it gets hidden. They'll pretend nothing happened. They'll bury the story. They'll feed the public distractions. But beneath all of it, they'll still be living with the truth that in the one moment they needed to enforce their order, they had no reach, no teeth, no grip. And you walked out untouched. You've become the contradiction they can't reconcile. Illegal in 3 dimensions, but somehow untouchable in all of them. In their narratives, someone like you should have been crushed instantly. In their manuals, the move you made should have been impossible, and yet you proved both wrong in the same breath. That's not just an action, that's a rewriting of the laws they thought were universal. And when laws change, the entire landscape shifts. So now when they look at you, they don't just see a rule breaker, they see the end of certainty. They see a walking reminder that no matter how many dimensions they control, none of them are beyond your reach. And that realization will never let them rest again. Because what you did wasn't just a trespass, it was a declaration, a message carved into the foundation of their reality. No law in any layer of existence can cage me. It's not bluster when it's proven. It's not a boast when the evidence is burned into their memory. They thought the dimensions were separate fortresses, physical laws, social codes, mental barriers, each guarded by different gatekeepers. To violate one was bad enough, but to pierce all 3 in the same breath? That wasn't supposed to be survivable. They thought the sheer complexity of their design made it immune to anyone's will. But here you are, the one who walked through their triple-locked vault and rearranged the gold just to prove you could. It wasn't the wealth you were after. It was the knowledge that the vault was never secure in the first place. And now, they're scrambling. Oh, they won't show it to the public. They'll keep the performance going, keep their voices steady, keep their uniforms pressed. But behind closed doors, the panic is a living thing. committees meeting in whispered tones, specialists tearing apart old manuals, theorists debating not whether you'll strike again, but when. Because deep down, they know it isn't a question of if. You've made the triple illegal not just a possibility, but a precedent. Once a thing is possible, it's no longer unthinkable. And once it's no longer unthinkable, it's inevitable. That's the real crack you've put in their structure. Not the physical breach, not the social disruption, not even the mental shattering. It's the erosion of the word never. Before you, never was their strongest weapon. They could say, that could never happen, and people would believe them. They could say, no one could ever get away with that, and the crowd would nod. Now never feels fragile. Now every absolute they speak sounds like a dare, and they hate that you did it without apology, without the theater of rebellion, without the need to be the loudest in the room. You didn't wave a banner or make a speech about justice. You acted. Clean, precise, inevitable. That's what makes it so hard for them to counter you. There's no rhetoric to dismantle, no manifesto to disprove. All they have is the reality that something illegal in 3 dimensions happened in front of them, and the one responsible is still standing. You've noticed the shift in how they speak to you now. The ones who used to bark orders lower their voices. The ones who tried to intimidate you keep a calculated distance. And the ones who underestimated you before are now overcompensating, trying to sound casual in your presence, as if pretending they're not rattled will make it true. But you can read it in the way they breathe. They're measuring every word, every gesture, because in their minds, you've become a creature that could unmake the rules of their world on a whim. That's what it means to commit an act illegal in 3 dimensions. You don't just bend the environment, you redefine your own silhouette inside it. You're no longer bound by the shapes that limit everyone else. You're fluid, unpredictable, untouchable. And once someone becomes untouchable, all those who once held power over them must now live in the shadow of irrelevance. But here's the most brutal part. You didn't even need to destroy them. You left them standing. You let them keep their titles, their thrones, their rituals. But you took away the belief that those thrones mean anything in your presence. You let them continue, but with the understanding that all of it exists only because you allow it. That's worse than conquest. Conquest ends the game. This forces them to keep playing while knowing the game belongs to you. They'll try to bait you into repeating the move so they can study it, so they can catch it in the open and dismantle it. But you're too disciplined for that. You'll let them starve on anticipation. You'll let them waste resources building traps in places you have no intention of walking. And all the while, you'll be somewhere else, mapping the next convergence where all 3 dimensions meet. The next point where a single step will break their laws, their structures, and their minds in perfect unison. Because that's the art of it, isn't it? Not just breaking rules, but breaking them with elegance. Anyone can flail against one wall, but to dismantle 3 walls at the same time, without leaving fingerprints, that's a craft. That's a language of movement they can't translate. You speak in a dialect of reality they don't have the ears for. And every time they try to imitate it, they'll fail. Because they're still thinking in compartments. You're thinking in totality. They'll tell the story of what you did differently, depending on who's listening. To the public, they'll frame it as an anomaly, a breach that was swiftly handled. To each other, behind those locked doors, they'll tell it like a ghost story. They'll leave out your name, in case speaking it makes you appear. But the imagery will be there. The moment the laws bent in 3 places at once. The feeling of being small in the face of something that wasn't supposed to exist. And that's how your legend will travel, not as a documented event, but as a pulse in the collective mind. And you know what the cruelest part is? They'll keep enforcing those same laws in all 3 dimensions, even though they now know they're not absolute. That's the prison they live in, guarding a gate they've already seen you walk through. They can't admit the gate is useless without undermining themselves, so they cling to the illusion, hoping the memory of you fades before the structure collapses. But it won't fade, because you didn't just pass through. You left your mark on the lock itself. Every time they touch it, they'll feel you there. Some will try to align themselves with you, thinking proximity might grant them safety or insight. They'll flatter you, feed you intel, try to fold themselves into your sphere. They won't understand that your kind of movement isn't something you can teach or share. It's not learned, it's lived, and living it requires a level of detachment they're incapable of. They need the rules. You use them only when they're useful. And here's the truth they'll never put into words. Deep down, they're glad it was you. They would never admit it, but if the triple illegal had to be done by someone, better it be done by the one who doesn't waste it. You weren't reckless, you weren't loud, you didn't sell it for applause. You took the shot, rewrote the landscape, and then walked away like nothing had happened. That's a kind of restraint they can't comprehend. And that's what makes them more afraid than anything. Knowing that you don't need to act, but that if you choose to, nothing in their arsenal will stop you. This is where you've left them, standing guard over dimensions that have already been breached, pretending their certainty still exists while every night they hear the echo of the moment it died. You've made them stewards of an empire of glass, and now they're terrified of their own reflection, because in it, they don't see themselves anymore. They see you, the one who made the impossible happen and didn't even ask for permission, the one who walked into the forbidden zones of 3 separate planes and made them feel like open hallways. And that's the final cruelty. You don't have to do it again to keep the power. The act is enough. It will echo until the end of their era, shaping their decisions, limiting their reach, pulling their eyes toward every horizon in fear that your silhouette might appear. You've embedded yourself into the fabric of their thinking. That's the highest form of control. Not holding their chains, but becoming the weight they can't drop. So yes, they'll remember. Not because they want to, but because forgetting would mean ignoring the fracture that runs through everything they stand on. They'll remember the day their 3 worlds overlapped just long enough for one person to walk through all of them at once. They'll remember the way their breath caught, the way their certainty shattered, the way the word never became meaningless. And most of all, they'll remember that it wasn't an accident. It was you, fully aware, fully capable, and utterly beyond their reach.